So I did post your first YouTube video through it's through Canvas, but it's actually on YouTube. And so if you go to in-class lectures on YouTube, this is the Canvas splash page for our course, right? I'm going to click on that. So if you happen to miss kind of our real first day of class, which was last Wednesday, you can review the entire thing on YouTube. So you click on the 16th of May. And
okay, so hopefully this first video.
It's an hour and 16 minutes, and I will post them all after class so that you can review them. So if you're gone or you happen to miss class or whatever, right, or you just want to, a lot of students just like to review it again so that something they missed, right, they can re-look at it. All of these are on YouTube. Unless you're way more fancy about YouTube than me. I've made them private so they're not listed. So, you know, if you don't have them saved or whatever, if you haven't subscribed or whatever, then you're not going to be able to search my name and find them. They're, you know, but you can go through this link and find it always. So the in-class lecture is posted for last week, and I'll post this one after class as well. I have posted our quiz for the week. So if you click on Take the Weekly Quiz, then it's available here. Like I said, I don't care if you use your notes or if you look things up online or however you want to get these quizzes done, as long as they're done individually, right? I'm fine with that. So use your notes, this one's on the syllabus, right? Use the syllabus to complete these. But I think this one maybe has 10 questions, so it's 10 points, right? And they're all done on Canvas, and I will have them due on Sunday evenings. So this one is due on May 27th. And so you have until Sunday to get this one completed, okay? All right, so the quiz for this week is posted. Our first lecture is posted. Again, we have our video tutorials here. These are from version 2015, so they're slightly outdated, but I still feel like they're helpful topics until I can get them re-recorded. Our schedule is here, and our syllabus is here. Assignments, I did post one assignment that you'll be working on for this week, and I have made it due after Memorial Day. So May 31st, and we'll talk about this after we finish our lecture today. I want to remind everybody that we are not here on the 28th. So after our Wednesday night lecture, we won't be here until the 30th. Okay. Any other questions for me on anything before we get going?
That quiz, the first one, is
Yes.
that for this week or for last week's material?
It was for last week's material. Yeah, so it's really on the syllabus, so just some random questions about, you know, things we discussed on the syllabus. Yep. All right, so I'm going to take this back over here. All right. Oh, sorry, one thing I did forget to say about Canvas. I want to remind you all that our course booklet, if you go to assignments, if you want to buy a copy of the course packet, you can at the bookstore, right? They are available. But if you don't want a physical copy and you just like to use a PDF, then you can go to assignments and go to download. Yep.
Sorry, do you know about how much the physical copy costs?
I think it was $40.
40?
And I think is it 30? Okay. Okay. So now that you've already bought it, right, I'm telling you this, but so when they print it in color, it's 30. When they print it in black and white for you, it's like 12. So you could even ask them, hey, will you print a black and white copy for me? And they will, and they'll call you when it's ready. Yeah. But if you want the digital copy, it's under assignments. You go to download course manual here, you click on that, and a PDF of our course manual is here. So if you click on that, it will pop up as a download, right? And that way, you know, you have the workbook. And I will open it up periodically in class, and we'll talk about kind of where we're at so that you can follow along with that. So I'm going to go back to 1310. Who did I just see walk in here? Let's see, she's Dadby? Is it Dadby? Yes. Is that right? Okay, perfect. Get you marked as here. There you go. Okay. All right, so this is our course manual. This is the first page. Today we're going to be really starting the curriculum, and we're going to be starting with talking about coordinates, the coordinate system in AutoCAD. So let's keep going here. we've talked about the AutoCAD interface, and I'll breeze over that just quickly again to remind you all because there was a lot having to do with that. And there's a lot of pages in here. Let's keep going, keep going. Where do I want to get to? Here we go. Okay, so we're going to start with coordinate entry, and that's page 32 of 191. Okay. All right, before we get going on that, though, I just want to take a few minutes and kind of breeze over what we talked about last time, okay? And I want to preface our course specifically because it's summertime and we only have 11 weeks instead of 16, right? I'm going to be moving pretty quickly through most of the material, right? So, which I don't feel that bad about because I record everything, so you can watch it again. But we will be moving more quickly than in a normal semester, just because we have fewer weeks, obviously, okay? But if you do have questions, feel free, just stop me, interrupt me, yell out my name, and we'll go back over whatever needs to be gone over again. Chuck, you look like you have a question. No? Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
I just have a question.
Yes.
I noticed that my last week's documents weren't saved onto the AutoCAD file. Like, I don't know. So, is there a reason why mine wouldn't be saved?
What do you mean they weren't saved?
Because your recent documents were saved from last week, and I did the same.
And so you're saying you had some documents that you saved and they are not showing up right here?
Yeah.
That, and you saved them onto that computer? Did you? And you sat there last week, right? I don't know. I might have to, that might just be a weird, quirky, like you're logging in here type thing that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else have recent documents showing up on this computer? No? Okay. It might just be a here thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Because at home, if you work on your laptop, they'll show up. I guarantee it.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Okay. All right. So let's breeze through what we talked about last time, and I'll go pretty quickly. Here's our AutoCAD interface, right? And I just want to reiterate, this is what the AutoCAD 2019 icon looks like. And to download that, you're going to Google search download free AutoCAD for students or something to that effect, right? And you'll download it. This is what the icon looks like. If you can't find it on your desktop, you're going to go down to your little window and you're going to start typing in AutoCAD, and you can find it there as well. Okay. I'm going to come back here to AutoCAD. This is our AutoCAD sort of welcome page. We have a brand new Start Blank Drawing button right here. We have a Templates drop-down. Okay. We have Open Files. We have Recent Documents. And again, we talked about these last time, so I won't go into a lot of depth, but I'll just remind you where these things are. So to start a brand new blank AutoCAD drawing with no settings in it, I'm going to click here. To open up an AutoCAD template file, which we discussed, the different file types in AutoCAD last time, I'm going to come here and pick whatever template I want to start. If I have a drawing that I've recently worked on and saved on my computer, except maybe here in our lab, right? Those should show up in recent documents. So if I'm continually working on the file that's called test file, I could click on that file, and by clicking on that file in recent documents, that would open, right? This recent documents here sort of saves me from browsing into my file structure on my computer to find files that I want to open, okay? Up here we have a couple of tabs, right? We have the Start tab open, we have the test file open here, okay? These are going to be the open tabs, open drawing files that are open in AutoCAD currently. If I wanted to create a new file, or I wanted to open a new file, I could come over here and click on this little plus sign, new drawing, click, okay? By clicking on that new drawing, this little plus sign right here, that is essentially the same as going to the Start screen and clicking on Start Drawing. It's going to open up the same file, a blank AutoCAD file. Okay. Up here in the top left-hand corner, we have the big A, which is the application menu. The application menu, when I click on it, has a lot of system-type applications or operations. So things like new file, open file. If we get into an actual AutoCAD drawing, right, there's going to be printing options and exporting options and different options like units and a bunch of other things that we can set. Okay, so our application menu, the big A, is going to be system type settings. We have our quick access menu up here. These are going to be, the most commonly used commands in AutoCAD. And they're on the quick access toolbar up here so that you can access them quickly, right? So things like printing, saving, opening, those are things that you do constantly. Undo, redo, constantly you're doing. So they're located up here in the quick access toolbar. We have our file menus here. And if these file menus are not showing up in your AutoCAD either here or at home, it's because they're turned off. And we can turn them on by going up to the quick access toolbar here, clicking on this down arrow, and going down to, instead of hide menu bar, if we choose show menu bar, it will turn those file menus on. Okay. I've said it before, but I think a big struggle with students is going from the lab here where your AutoCAD looks one way and going home, working on your laptop, and it looks slightly different, right? Generally, you know what you need to do, but when things look different, it makes it really difficult. So one of the things I like to really focus on is making sure that what your screen looks like here is what it looks like at home. And that's going to be one of those settings. We have underneath the file menus, we have our ribbon, right? Our ribbon is full of icons, and these icons are drawing commands, modification commands, annotation commands. Really any command in AutoCAD is located here on the ribbon somewhere. This ribbon is organized with tabs. So we have the Home tab, the Insert, the Annotate, the Parametric, the View, etc. I can click on a tab to reveal different commands on each of these tabs. On each of these tabs, we have these little tool palettes, right? And each of these tool palettes contains similar type tools. So for example, under the Home tab, we have the Draw tool palette. And on the Draw tool palette, we have line, polyline, circle, arc, right? All drawing commands. If we go to Annotate, we have the Annotate tab. We have the text tool palette. And the text tool palette has text type operations on it. So we have ways of creating text, different text styles, different text heights. Okay, so we have tabs, and those tabs are organized into tool palettes, and the tool palettes contain similar operations in AutoCAD. All right, so we know what these little tabs are for here. I move down into my drawing space here. Okay, this area, this black background with this grid in AutoCAD is called model space. And model space is where we draw. Model space is an infinitely sized drawing board, which means that I can draw any size of building or object or entity in this space, and I'll have enough room to do it, right? So if I have a building that is, 3 miles by 2 miles, I can draw that 3 mile wide by 2 mile high building in here, and it will fit because it's an infinite drawing board. Okay. So in model space we draw things, and we draw them to real world scale. Okay. Model space is organized around what's called an origin. This is our origin down here, right? We have a Y direction and we have an X direction. If I come down here even further on the bottom right, I have some tabs. I'm on currently the model space tab. If I click on it, nothing happens because I'm already in model space. If I click on layout 1, click, I move into a different screen. And this screen has kind of a little faux piece of paper sitting on it, right? This area is called paper space. In model space we draw, in paper space we print. That's the kind of difference between the two. And the idea is that in model space we draw these large buildings that can be gigantic, right? And in paper space we scale them down by viewing them a different way to make them physically fit on a piece of paper when we print, right? Somehow we have to take a building that is 400 feet by 400 feet and scale it down so it will fit and be able to be measured on a piece of paper that's 2 feet by 3 feet, okay? So that's the idea behind paper space. I have several here, right? We've got a few going on here. I can click on them and they all, engage. To get back to model space, I'm just going to click on the model space tab.
Can I ask you a question
Yep.
about paper space?
Yeah.
On mine, for whatever you like on the paper space,
Uh-huh.
there's a grid on the
Oh, yeah. So it looks more like that? Yes. F7.
F7.
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
Did
Easy enough.
Yes.
Did that work? Okay. All right. I'll tell you all the little secret about the F keys too today. I think I forgot last time and I remembered as I was leaving. We'll talk about the F keys. Okay. So F7, I'm in model space. F7, my grid turns off. F7, it turns back on.
Sorry, actually,
Oh,
so turn the grid off in the background, but in my drawing space, it's still showing a grid.
like in here, it's still showing a grid. I wouldn't worry too much about it right now.
That's fine. I just didn't
okay.
know if I did something wrong.
Nope, you're good. The only reason I'm not going to tell you how to do it is because I know you'll get stuck in here. So we'll just leave we'll leave it for now. Nope, you're good. Okay, so I'm gonna skip the command line and just pop over here because what I did using the F key is essentially the same as clicking on one of these icons on our Object Snap toolbar down here. Okay, so we have our Object Snap toolbar down here in the bottom right-hand corner of our model space. This little icon right here, see it says grid mode, and next to it it says F7 in parentheses. If I click on this, right, it grays out and the grid turns off in model space. And the same thing will happen in paper space, okay? If I come down here and click again, it turns on. If I press F7, right, it turns on and off as well. So the thing that I forgot to tell you all is that there is an F key for every one of these operations down here. So for well, not all of them, I lied. The one I picked doesn't have one, obviously, of course. But probably the most used ones, let me say that. So F8 is ortho, F10 is polar tracking, we've got F3 for object snap, and that's probably the extent of most of them. F11 for object snap tracking. I don't think we can, we're not going to be able to do it there. But what I do see here is that although I don't have an F key to press to maybe change my units, which is this key down here, it does show me the shortcut. So I can type units and that will pop up, right? I can come over here to ortho and I can press F8. And before that, it also says ortho mode. I could type ortho mode and I could, initiate, turn on or off that command.
So many F keys aren't doing anything? Or am I?
Well, you may not see anything happening. Are you seeing these at least turn on and off? Like if you press F8, so F8, do you see that highlight and unhighlight?
Yeah.
So nothing is really happening because you're not performing any operations drawing, right? But you will notice things happening. So for example, if I initiate my line command, I click and I start drawing, click, click, and then I press F8, click. Oh, do you see it snap and it won't let me move my mouse in a that polar tracking sort of way? It's locked it into ortho. Now I press F8, right, and I get that action back. Okay. So not each of them, but most of these have an F key associated with them, which is super annoying when you purchase you purchase a laptop and you don't realize how much you use your F keys, right? And a lot of laptops don't have an F key. I mean, they have them, but you have to press function first and then the F key, which I feel like is a big waste of time. Anyway, it slows me down, right? So if you're getting a new laptop, try and get one with the F keys at the top to, be fast at AutoCAD. Okay, so we have our model space tabs, we have our layout tabs, which is paper space. I popped over here and I showed you we've got our object snap toolbar, right? These are drawing aids. We talked about these last time. The drawing aids help you draw, essentially. Now, if you may not have changed these last time we talked, but there is a way to customize which object snaps you're seeing down here. And the way that we're going to do that is coming down to customization, these three little lines at the very end of that, clicking, and it's a toggle, it's a little check mark toggle next to these. You can click on them and turn them on and off, okay? There is one of these that I do want you to have turned on for today that may not be turned on in your AutoCAD system right now, and it's called dynamic input. So if you all don't have that turned on, you will want to turn it on. Okay. Your name was Dallin, is that right? You may want to log into your computer there. It's the same login as your My Page account. Are you an employee of the college? By chance?
An employee?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Then it's just your regular log. There's a prefix if you are an employee.
Oh, there is?
Okay. So if you haven't, click on these 3 little lines here and go up and just turn on your dynamic input. Your dynamic input icon looks like that. Okay. I will say that one thing I like about 2019 is the icons are larger. I feel like I don't have to squint every time I'm going down to browse a little tiny icon, which I feel like is nice. Yep.
I really went through this, but would you, do you change the units by any chance?
Yes, we are going to change the units. Yes. So right now, in my blank AutoCAD drawing, well, let me say this. We will change the units when it's appropriate, but it's good to be thinking about it, right? So for today, the system we're going to be working in is actually decimal units. But when we get to architectural type things, we're going to change it to architectural units, right? So this units I have displayed here, and I have that displayed because I came to my customization, I clicked on units and made that turn on, right? If I click this little down arrow, I can choose architectural, and that changes my input to architectural, okay? I'm going to leave this just in decimal because we're going to be working in decimals today. Okay, so I have all of my object snaps turned on and off, and have some things turned on and some things, you know, turned off icon-wise. Moving to the middle here of my screen, right, we have our command line. And the command line is another way of initiating commands in AutoCAD. So anything that is contained, and by anything I mean any command that is contained in the ribbon, there's also a keyboard input that you can input on your command line, okay? So I can come down here and let me undo my dynamic input. I can type L-I-N-E, enter, click, 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 escape, escape, and I can draw some lines. Okay. Now, if you have your dynamic input turned on, this little guy, click, the command line function switches to your cursor. So now if I type line, L-I-N-E, right, with my dynamic input turned on, then the input for the command line shifts up to my cursor here, right? So if you see that happening, that's why. It's because the dynamic input here is turned on, okay? So when I initiate a command in AutoCAD, I can do it using the ribbon. I can initiate it using the command line. And another way that we haven't really talked about a whole lot, and I probably won't talk about it a whole lot because it's somewhat outdated, is I can also come up to some of these file menus. For example, there's the draw menu. I can drop down, I can click on line, click, 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 right? Escape, escape, and I can initiate commands that direction as well. Another thing I want to remind you of is the escape key is your get out of jail free card, right? Anytime you initiate a command, you execute the command. If you're still in the command and you don't want to be in it anymore, you can hit escape. If you get into something and it was a mistake, escape. If you select something and it was a mistake, you can escape and you can get out of it. Okay, so escape clears any command out of AutoCAD. All right. All right. We'll talk, that was quick, right? Last time it took us like an hour and a half to do that. Let's talk about selection really quick, and then we'll get into our coordinate systems, okay? We talked briefly last time about selecting objects in AutoCAD, right? I gave you just enough, I guess maybe technique to draw a few things, right? I said, hey, if you want to draw a line, go up and click on line. Come down in model space and click, 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 escape, 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 and you can draw some things, right? Which maybe some of you did. But the problem is that if you get some of these things on your screen, right, it's all cluttered up and you don't know how to get rid of it, right? So we talked about selecting and deleting items. And again, I want to remind you about the different selection methods in AutoCAD. We have the pick, where if I hover over an object, right, and it highlights, I can click and I can hit delete. That's a pick. Click, 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 delete. Okay. We have two different types of selection windows. We have a blue selection window and we have a green selection window. Okay. The windows are activated in model space, and there's no command. You don't have to type in select or whatever to get it to initiate it. The commands are inherent. So usually before I select something, I hit escape to clear out any other command. and I click, I move my mouse, and anything that I touch, even if I just touch a tiny bit of it, right, I'm touching that bottom corner of that line, the endpoint, even if I just touch a tiny bit of it, if I click a second time, all of the objects that I touch with a green selection window are highlighted, and I can delete using the delete key on the keyboard. Okay. Side note, the space bar is an enter key on the keyboard in AutoCAD. Okay. So we have the green selection window where I'm not pressing anything. I click, move in the direction I want to go, and you're noticing I'm starting at the top right and I'm moving down to the bottom left. That's the movement of a green selection window. And as I touch things, they highlight. Escape, escape. That is different from a blue selection window that I get when I start in the bottom left, click, and I just move my mouse. I'm not holding my mouse key, I'm just letting, free moving my mouse now. Anything that I touch is not selected, but anything that I wholly encompass in that blue selection window is selected, right? So if I wanted to select these two lines right here, right, I would hover over them with my blue selection window and grab them in their entirety. Okay, click, delete. Yep.
Can you start that like in the middle of the screen? So if you
Yep.
like wanted to start closer to the line?
Absolutely.
As long as it's bottom left or bottom right. Okay.
Yep, the movement, it doesn't matter where you start it. So I could start here, click, go that way, right? Or up here, click, see, it's just that movement from the bottom left to the top right and opposite. So you can really start it anywhere. Yep. Now if you happen to hold, click, hold your mouse button and drag your mouse, you'll get a lasso, right? I mean, if you like the lasso, you can use it. I feel like it's messy. Yep.
What's the difference, or you're saying, for the blue box, start in the bottom left and go up and right.
Right.
What if you start in the top left?
Top right,
Down.
bottom left.
Needs
Yep.
to be specific that way.
Yep, so bottom, if it's the bottom left to the top right, it's blue. And it doesn't matter where you start. If you start from here and go that direction, you're going to get blue.
Because I'm just seeing on here, if I start anywhere, top or bottom, but if I go right, it's blue.
Yeah, yes. Well, you're going to have to move, like, you're generally, if I click, right, I'm going that way, but I'm still somewhat moving in, we'll say, the Y direction. You see that? I'm still somewhat moving in the Y direction. So it is somewhat that movement as opposed to starting up here and going this direction. Yes. Yeah. All right. So we have the pick, we have the selection windows, we have the lassos, right? They're all doing the same thing. Whatever you want, however you want to accomplish your selections is whatever's best for you is great, right? If you happen to select something and delete it and you didn't mean to, you can come up here and you can click on undo. This is our undo. Click, 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 click. This guy asked last time, hey, what if I want to do Control Z, right? That's great too. Control Z. And it's undoing what I've just done, right? I could also type undo at the command line, U-N-D-O, enter. And I'm going to hit enter, 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 enter. And as I hit enter, it reinitiates that undo. So it does undo, 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 undo. So I can Control Z. I can come up here and click on undo. I can type undo at the command line. The keyboard shortcut for undo is U. So I could also just type U, enter, and it would continue to undo things. Okay. None of these ways are more right than another. Whatever you get most comfortable with, right? So I'm a keyboard person. I like to Control Z. I like to U enter, U enter, U enter, right? My husband's more of a button guy. He likes the buttons. So he'll come up here, he'll move his mouse all the way up here at the drawing screen, right? Click, 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 click. He'll undo what he wants to undo, then he'll move it all the way back down here and continue drawing, right? It's very slow, very, very, very slow. All right. Final thing we'll talk about from last time is navigation around model space, right? It looks like everybody is somewhat navigating okay. We have the zoom. We'll start with zooming, where I take my mouse. I've got the middle roller button on my mouse. If I push that roller away from me, I zoom in. If I pull the roller back towards me, I zoom out. If I zoom so far out or so far in that I get lost and I can't find my geometry, no matter what I do, I have zoom extents, which is a double click of the middle roller. Click, click. And all of my geometry is brought out into view. And it's brought into view with the zoom extents, because AutoCAD takes the view on your screen to the extent of the drawn geometry on your screen, essentially. Okay? So if I zoom in and I get lost, click, click, zoom extents. If I zoom out too far and I get lost, click, click, zoom extends. And I'm double clicking that middle roller twice, very fast. Okay? So get used to zooming in and zooming out, right? One thing I want to point out about really any of the drawing aids, so we're working with zooming right now, but really zooming or panning or orbiting, or if you turn on or off an object snap down here like ortho, it's not going to break the current command you're in, okay? And what I mean by that is, let me select all those and delete. If I'm drawing a line, click, and I click, click, and I think, oh, I can't see what's going on right there, and I want to zoom in, I can zoom in, right? I can zoom in, and I can still continue to draw. Zoom in, continue to draw. Zoom in, continue to draw, right? I feel like when you're a beginning student, half the battle is just getting the command to work, right? So you get panicked, like, oh, if I zoom, it's going to break the command, and I'm going to have to go and find that command again and get it started again, right? Don't be afraid. It will continue on. I can even click, click, zoom extents, and it will zoom extents and continue that line command, okay? So these are meant to help you, not hinder you. So as you draw, they don't break the command that you're in. I'm going to escape, escape to get out of that command. I can zoom in, zoom out. I can also pan. So panning is allowing you to move kind of back and forth, up and down, all around your screen, right? I pan, I'm moving my screen around. I'm essentially taking my hand and just dragging my drawing board back and forth, right? And I can pan by holding that middle roller button down, continuing to hold it and moving my mouse, okay? So I hold my middle roller, I move whatever I want to view into my field of vision, and then I zoom in, I pan a little bit more, I zoom in, right? Pan a little bit more, I can zoom out a little, pan a little bit more, okay? If I want to click, click, zoom extents, I can bring everything into view. All right, any questions so far? Okay, so there's last time in a nutshell, right? Good little overview. Let's talk about our coordinate system here, and let's start talking about how we're going to begin drawing. And the way we're going to begin drawing is extremely precise. So we'll start with the very precise kind of formal way of drawing and talk about how the system functions, and then we will somewhat evolve into how we really actually draw, right? With an understanding of how the underlying system functions, okay? The first thing I want to say, I'm just going to delete some of these things out, and I'm actually going to close a few of these files so I don't have anything open. Okay, and I'm going to click on Start Drawing here, click, and open up a blank file. All right. The first thing I'm going to point out here, and I said this before, but AutoCAD is organized around an origin. So I've got this little XY marker right here. This is kind of the 0, 0 point of AutoCAD. Okay, and I like to point that out. Let's see. Oh boy, they're already copying and trimming. Whatever this is. Okay. Back to some, I guess this is the algebra, maybe. I don't know. Right, we have our 0, 0 here. And this is our origin. Okay, and we have our x direction here, we have our y direction here, we have our negative x here, and we have our negative y direction here, right? And this is how AutoCAD is organized on the screen when you view it, right? And this has a name, it's called the Cartesian coordinate system. So AutoCAD is organized around the Cartesian coordinate system. And the way that functions is it functions around an ordered pair of numbers, right? So if I were to say, let's do this grid. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I also have a negative direction. So -1, -2, -3, -4. 1, 2, 3, those are -1, 2, -3, -4. Okay? So the way that this functions, we have our 0, 0 point. And if I have a line, for example, that starts right here, and it goes, maybe it goes off to right here. Okay? The way that AutoCAD sort of, you can figure out where those points are, where the line starts, where the line stops, is using the Cartesian coordinate system. And in an ordered pair, essentially. So if I were to want to define where that line was in model space, it would be at 1, 1, and this line goes to here. And then it would be at 3, right, because this comes up to here, 2. Okay, that's essentially how the system works. So when you're locating things in AutoCAD, it's according to these ordered pairs. Now, AutoCAD does have a third axis that runs through here, and it's the z-axis, which we're not going to use in this class. But if you ever want to get into 3D AutoCAD, or I mean even in Revit or other rendering, not even just rendering, but other programs that have a third dimension, it's going to be the z-axis, right? So, and really, if we were to think about this properly, we have a 0, 0, 0 ordered pair because we have x, we have y, and we also have z, essentially, okay? So today I'm going to talk about how this applies to AutoCAD, but I want you all to kind of remember that I've said this. This is not usually how you go about drawing every day, right? So we're not going to go into AutoCAD and say, let's draw some lines, except for this week. Let me say. We're not going to say, oh, 1, 1, 3, 2, 6, 4. You're not really going to have to keep track of where you are in AutoCAD all of the time, right? It's good to know how the system functions, and we'll go through that today and have an assignment for that today. But other than that, you're going to be working a lot. It's going to be a lot easier than this, essentially. Okay. All right. So let's look at this system. Okay. There's a couple, this is the book again. There's a couple of different ways we're going to interact with the Cartesian coordinate system and draw lines. Okay. We are going to use absolute coordinates to draw lines. We're going to use relative coordinates to draw lines. We're going to use polar coordinates to draw lines. We're going to use direct distance to draw lines. And then we're going to talk about dynamic input just a little bit. So those are going to be our, 5 topics for today. And then you'll have an assignment dealing with all of those, okay? So this is page, it's 32 on the PDF, but it's 1-30 in the workbook. On that page, all of these different ways of inputting lines into AutoCAD are defined. But before all of these different ways of inputting lines are defined, we talk about the user coordinate system, which is what I just talked about on the board, right? Our user coordinate system in AutoCAD, it's a gridded system based on the Cartesian coordinate system. We have 3 axes, x, y, and z. X is to the right, y is up. Their negatives are opposite that. And then the z comes out of the screen towards you as that third dimension, okay? Let's talk about absolute coordinates. And when I talk about absolute coordinates, relative coordinates, polar coordinates, these are all very formal ways of drawing lines, okay? And the way that we're going to draw these lines is by inputting their beginning point and their end point using these ordered numbered pairs, okay? So this system up here where I said, oh, this line starts at ordered pair 1, 1. It ends at 3, 2. We're going to learn how to input lines by doing that, essentially, okay? And we're going to do it this week, and we're going to know how it works. And for the rest of the semester, we're not going to use it a whole lot. Maybe now and again we might use some of these systems, but not a whole lot, okay? All right, so we're going to talk about the absolute coordinate system first, all right? And absolute coordinate systems, when we input lines or points, according to the absolute coordinate system, we are basing our coordinates on the origin, on point 0, 0. Okay? So let me show you what that means. Okay. I'm going to go to the CAD Common Drive right now. So I'm going to go to my window and start typing file. And I'm going to go to, where am I going? This PC. And I'm going to go to CAD Common, click, click. And I'm going to go to Arch 1310. And I want to go to coordinates today. I'm going to open up absolute coordinate. Oh, look, there's one for Emma.
Oh.
Whoops. Okay. All right. So these have sort of been contrived in here, right? Jeff, I talk about Jeff, we'll blame all of this on Jeff, right? He's the one who came up with these exercises, and he's kind of set them up within these files to make them work for us, right? They will work, they generally will work, but he's kind of contrived these to make them absolutely work for us when we draw these, okay? All right, so I have this file open, and you can all open it, and you might get an error that says something like, would you like to read this, open this file, read only, right? And you can say yes, and you can open it, right? So if you wanted to open this file with me, you can, and you can kind of follow along, right? If you just want to watch, that's fine too. Like I said, I record all of these, so if you want to revisit them, that's totally fine. I'm going to save this one, File, Save As, and on my desktop I have a folder called AutoCAD Summer. I'm going to make a new folder in here called Coordinates, and we'll just save that as absolute coordinates. All right. So my goal with using the absolute coordinate system to draw lines is using these ordered pairs, okay? I want to be able to recreate this shape over here, okay, using these ordered pairs. Now, let me just show you, okay? I want to start this off by showing you eventually how you're just going to be able to do this, right? Eventually, what you're going to do is you're going to come in here and you're just going to draw lines like this. Oh my gosh, look how easy that is, right? That's how easy it's going to be. But we have to kind of learn the hard way first. So essentially what we want to do today is recreate this shape over here using absolute coordinates. And absolute coordinates means we are going to input points based on point 0. All right? So what I'm going to do is I want to draw my first line, the starting point of my first line at point 1, 1. All right? Now, there's going to be a lot of explanation on this first exercise because we've never done it, right? On the second, third, fourth one, there's going to be fewer explanation, a little less explanation. But essentially, I'm going to have to show you how to initiate the line command. I'm going to have to show you how to input the ordered pair and then continue inputting ordered pairs until we get that shape. All right, so there's a few things we have to do. So the first thing we need to do in order to draw this shape over here is we need to initiate the line command. All right, and there's a few ways we can do that. I can bring my mouse up to the line command, which is on the Home tab, and click. Okay, that initiates the line command. I can hit escape and exit out of that. Why don't you all, if you're following along, why doesn't everybody come down here and turn dynamic input off? It's if you don't see this dynamic mode icon, go over to customization and make sure it's turned on with a little check. Okay, and I'm going to turn it off. So click, and that little icon fades, it turns gray, and it's turned off. All right, so I'm going to initiate my line command using the command line now. When I start typing L-I-N-E, AutoCAD automatically knows, since dynamic input is turned off, that I want to type at the command line. And it knows as I type L-I-N-E that there are several commands starting with L, you know, and it's gonna use predictive text to predict what command I want to use. Okay, so if I start typing L, it starts predicting, hey, maybe you want to type a line. So I could hit enter at that point, and at the command line it says specify the first point. Great. Escape, escape. I can also type L-I-N-E, enter, and it initiates the line command. Escape, escape. Okay. Line spacebar. Remember, spacebar means enter in AutoCAD. All right. So there's no spaces between commands, obviously, because if you hit the spacebar, it would just hit enter, which executes the command. All right. Escape, escape. Again, I could come up here to line, click, and start the line command. Regardless of how you started, it doesn't really matter. Again, there's no right or wrong in starting the command. Okay. The next thing that you're going to see down here at the command line is it says specify the first point. So the way that AutoCAD functions is you're going to initiate a command and you're going to get to the point where you know the next step. Okay, but until you know that next step, AutoCAD is going to guide you through what you need to do. All right, so it says specify the first point. Well, generally in the future, the first point will be a click. We're going to go to model space and we're going to click and we're going to start that command. But in this case where I want to use ordered pairs to input my points, I'm going to type in some ordered pairs. Okay, so it says specify the first point. Well, my first point, when I look over here, is at 1, 1. So I'm going to type 1, 1 at my command line. And when I do that, I'm going to hit enter next. AutoCAD is going to define my first point, 1 space in the X direction and 1 space in the Y direction from that origin. Right? That's what absolute coordinate means, is that AutoCAD defines that first point, whatever you input that ordered pair as, it defines it from the origin, right? So I'm going over 1 and up 1. Okay, great. So now it's time for me, I want to have my second point defined. And my second point, now one thing I want you to notice is that AutoCAD, the line command is continuing, right? It's what's called the chain command. So it's not going to end itself until I hit escape or I hit enter, all right? So if I hit escape, it deletes that last command. So if I hit escape right now, that's what would happen, right? It would go away. And I'd have to type L, enter, 1, 1, enter, and reinitiate it. Okay, well, I want to go to this next point. This next ordered pair is 4 over from the origin in the X direction. X is always this first number. Y is always the second number. X is always in the horizontal direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then Y, one unit in the Y direction. Okay, so that's my 4, 1 coordinate. But I'm not clicking because we're using this coordinate system to input. So I'm going to type 4, 1, enter. Okay. Now your lines, they're going to be white on your screen, and that's fine, that's correct. Okay, we don't know yet how to make them these colors, which you eventually will. I can zoom in here a little bit and pan and see that my next ordered pair, now we kind of know how the system functions. 4, 2, enter. All right, now I want to input this pair here. 8, 2, enter. 8, 4, enter. Right? And again, you know, we've put these numbers, this ordered pair in the assignment, but if we didn't have these coordinates, you could figure this out very quickly. I could come over here and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units in the X direction. That's the horizontal. And 1, 2, 3, 4 units in the Y direction, which is the vertical. Okay, I want to hit this unit, this point here. 1, 4, and we're going to head back to our first point, which was 1, 1, enter. Yep.
My lines keep going like diagonally.
Do you have your dynamic input turned on? Your dynamic input will mess all of this up.
It's off.
Is it? Let me come look.
I was off when I was doing it.
Oh, you got it turned on.
Oh, this?
Yep. So if you see any of this going on, so click on that.
Oh, that.
Yep. And if you look down here, see it's turned on right there. There you go.
What do I have on that's giving me 2 units?
Ah, okay. So let me show everybody that. I was waiting to see if somebody actually would bring that one up. Okay. So when you start a brand new drawing, looks like this, right? And if I were to come in here and type L for line, enter, and I type 1, 1, enter. Okay. Oh, I don't remember what's the next one.
Forward one?
4, 1, enter. Okay. But what's happening here is it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 instead of and it's actually 8 because I at 1, 1, right? Instead of 4. The reason that it appears as if I'm getting 2 units instead of 1 is because my grid spacing, I'm going to just show you. My grid spacing is set to half in this drawing, that brand new blank AutoCAD drawing you opened. The grid spacing is set to half. And in this exercise that we're working on, it's set to 1. So essentially you're getting 2 gridded units in your blank AutoCAD template, and we're getting, 2 units for 1 because it's set at half, and we're getting 1 unit here. So it's not incorrect, it's just it's set to a different increment. Yeah. Yeah, you absolutely can. So if you're in here and you think, I'm a visual person, right? I want to make it right. If you come down here to this grid and you right click, grid settings, you could change that to 1 and it changes it automatically. They're equal, and I hit OK. And now, 1, 2, well, let's see. Doesn't look like it regenerated, does it?
Do you have to highlight it?
I'm wondering if let's just do it again. 1, 1, there we go. Okay, so now, no, I still have 1/2 inch spacing. Oh, snap, right here, sorry, missed the other one. 1, 1, there we go. Okay, there we go. L for line, and 1, 1, and immediately I can see that grid it's at 1, whatever 1 means, right? In this case, it's actually decimal inches, so it's 1 to 1 now, though. Okay, this system, though, will work whether or not you have that grid defined correctly, right? It was still looking at it correctly. It was just visually giving me the wrong cue. I could even turn my grid off, which is by clicking on this, or I could press F7 and turn it off, and the system would still function as well. All right, so I'm going to undo. Click, and I'm going to redraw this thing one more time pretty quickly, right? And I'll talk through it again. I initiate my line command, click. I come down to my command line and it says specify first point, right? This is going to be kind of a habit you get into with AutoCAD with, I would say, most of your operations at this point, right? You initiate the command, you look at the command line, you input, and then you finish, right? That's going to be how it is. So specify your first point. Well, I can click, which is what we can do that, but we're not going to do that. We're working on absolute coordinates today. So I have to input an absolute coordinate to specify my first point. Well, that absolute coordinate is 1, 1, and it's 1, 1, number 1, because we have this shown here, right? The coordinate is 1, 1, but also because I want my line to start at this point, which is over 1 increment and up 1 increment measured from the origin. Okay, 1, 1, enter. My second point is measured 4 units, 1 unit up from the origin, enter. The next one, 4, 2, enter. 8, 2, enter. 8, 4, enter. What happens if I accidentally hit escape or something happens and my command breaks and I think, oh great, what am I going to do now, right? How do I get back to where I was? Well, I know that this point is measured 8, 4 from the origin. So I could restart my line command. I could type 8, 4, enter, and it would start that line where it needed to be, where I left off. 1, 4, enter, and 1, 1, enter. Escape. Okay. Now before we get to the next input, I just want to show you what your assignment is going to look like so that you can be somewhat prepared. Let's see, we're on page 32. Okay. So your drawing assignment, and you're not going to, there's 10 of them, but I think you're only going to do like maybe 5 of them, essentially. There's a few you'll have to do. But this is a sampling of what your homework is going to look like, right? And it will give you a hint. It will say, hey, absolute coordinates, meaning you're going to use absolute coordinates to create this shape, right? So 1, 1, 3, 1, 3, 3. But essentially, you're going to, number 1, enter the line command at the prompt. Start the drawing at the absolute coordinate of 1, 1 by entering 1, 1 when prompted. And you're going to continue all the way around until you get this shape. Okay, so that's what some of your, I think you have like 5 or 6 of these to do. That is what your homework is going to look like. Okay. All right. No? Okay. So this is absolute coordinates. Let me go back to, we have the next coordinate system that we're going to talk about, relative coordinates. All right. And each of these things really, they have their own place in the system, right? I'll just be honest with you, very rarely do I ever use absolute coordinates. Very rarely. I use relative coordinates here and there, usually when I'm creating rectangles in AutoCAD. I don't use polar coordinates a whole lot, but direct distance, that's what I use 99% of the time. Okay, so it's good to understand this, you know, even though you may not use it a whole lot, but some of these others you'll use a little bit more frequently. Okay, so absolute coordinates, the coordinates are measured from the origin. All right, now I'm going to open up another drawing. I'm going to go to this PC, and I'm going to go to CAD Common. I can't see the whole thing. There we go, CAD Common, Arch 1310. And I'm going to go to coordinates, and I'm going to open up relative coordinates.
These exercises you're doing, do you want us to do them and submit them as well?
These class ones? No. Nope. These are just for following along. Yep. Okay. So the next type of entry we are going to be working with is relative coordinates. Okay. So relative coordinates, the idea that you're inputting an ordered pair to create line work is the same, right? So I'm entering an X and a Y coordinate to start and stop my line command. Now the difference between relative coordinates and absolute coordinates is that relative coordinates, okay, one coordinate is based or measured off of the previous coordinate that you entered. All right. Now this is with the exception of the very first one, because the very first one you don't have a previous coordinate to measure off of, so it's going to be measured off the origin. But all of these other coordinates are going to be measured off of one another, meaning I'm going to start at 1, 1, and this second coordinate is at 4, 1, but I'm going to be using a different system to input each of these. So the distance between this coordinate and that one is, in the X direction I have 1, 2, 3 units, and I don't have any in the Y because I'm not moving up and down. So using relative coordinates, okay, this point right here would be 1, 2, 3, 0. Okay, because I'm measuring from this first one. I'm not measuring from the origin anymore. So let me show you what that looks like. Again, I still have to start at 1, 1. So I'm going to initiate my line command. Click. And I'm going to type 1, 1, enter. All right. Now I need to draw my second line, 1, 2, 3 in the X direction and 0 in the Y. So it's 3, 0. But we have a prefix on relative coordinates. A relative coordinate input will not work if you don't put the @ symbol before your ordered pair. Okay, so instead of just typing 4, 1, I have to, number one, figure out the distance between my 2 points, and then I have to type at, 3, 4, or whatever that ends up being. This is the biggest, I mean, it's just so easy to forget, right? I do it all the time. I'm going along, drafting, and I forget the @ symbol and nothing works, right? So to get this second point, I'm going to type @ and I'm going to type in the X direction 3, 0. Enter. All right, now from this point to this point, in the X direction, we're not moving. So it's 0, and we're going up 1 unit in the Y direction. So this would be @ X is 0, comma 1. I always, yeah, the @ yep. So here's the thing. If you forget the @ symbol and I type something like 4, 1, well, that worked out actually pretty well. Let me undo that. But what it does is it measures off the origin, so it's where it shouldn't be, right? If you forget the @ symbol. All right, so this next point, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the X direction, and we're not moving in the Y, so this is going to be @ 4, 0. These are really easy just to kind of miscount or, miscalculate. Then this next one, I'm not moving in the X direction, but I'm going up 1, 2 in the Y. So @ 0, 2. Okay. I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the X direction. So @ 7, 0. What do you think happened there? Yes, good. That's right. Okay. Now here's a little trick, right? And I know this just because I've been doing this for a while, but I did it wrong, right? I went in the positive direction when I should have gone in the negative direction. I could hit escape, I could pick that line and hit delete. Or as I'm in this command, I want you to see that you're going to start noticing that within a specific command, like the line command, I have other kind of sub commands that I can perform. So if I click on undo, it will undo that last move. Okay. So now I'm going to type @ negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, -7, 0, enter. And I need to close this up, right? In the X direction, we're not moving, so this is going to be @ 0, -1, 2, 3, -3. Escape. Again, I don't get too burdened down, bogged down by this because we're not going to be doing AutoCAD like this every day, right? It would be ridiculous if we did it like this every day. It's going to be a lot quicker, but again, it's good to know this system. Okay, so relative coordinates, they're measured from one point to the next, and the difference between a relative coordinate input and an absolute drawing input is this @ symbol that you see, right? If you don't include that @ symbol, AutoCAD will just automatically assume you're measuring from the origin, and it will measure from the origin, and the line will usually be wrong. Okay? All right. Any questions so far? Okay. So the next coordinate system we're going to be talking about is called the polar coordinate system. I'm going to move a little bit quicker through polar and direct distance and dynamic because just from you answering back, I feel like maybe you're getting it, and it seems like you're all kind of drawing these things on your screen, so I think that is a good sign. So we're going to talk about polar input now, okay? The idea behind polar input is that you can input angled lines in AutoCAD as well, okay? Now, the polar coordinate system, let me say this. So we have kind of the very pure systems like absolute coordinates where you enter XY coordinates. You have the relative coordinate system where you enter @ and then you enter an XY coordinate, okay? And then you have the polar coordinate system where you are going to enter an angled line, right, with an ordered pair and an angle. But you could also, you're going to notice here, you could enter the @ symbol, right? So some of these are going to start becoming a combination of systems. So it's a polar input, right? But at the same time, it could be relative to the last point. So we're combining these two systems. Now, I'm going to show you how to do polar coordinate systems, use them. But I also want to remind you that I can use the polar tracking snap very easily to get all of these angles as well, right? So again, we're kind of learning the long route, but we have some object snaps that will help us draw these in the long run. So I'm going to open up polar. Okay, and I'm going to save this. Okay. All right. So here's kind of the tricky thing. Well, we'll get to it in a second. I'll show you the tricky thing about polar. Let's talk about the input with polar, okay? A polar input, you're going to have a distance, so a unit of distance. So for example, 1, that would be a unit of distance, right? And we're going to have an angle symbol, and that unit of 1 is going to start at a point, and it's going to go 1 unit of distance at an angle of 45 degrees. Okay, so that's how this syntax works. So if we have 1 at an angle of 45 degrees, right, we're going to go, if we start here, we're going to go 1 unit of distance at an angle, if we are looking at the kind of a 0 baseline, right, this is 0, at an angle of 45 degrees, and that would be where our second point would hit, right? So 1 unit of distance at an angle of 45 degrees, okay? All right. Again, this can be measured from the origin. It's not usually. So you'll see a relative @ symbol in front of these polar inputs, okay? All right, so I've got my little diagram over here. I'm using the polar coordinates file now. One thing I do want you to remember is that the right hand rule, where this moving towards this direction, so we have our 0, 90, 180, 270, okay? Moving to the right in a counterclockwise manner is going to be a positive angle. And if you're moving towards the left and you're going counter or going clockwise, it's going to be a negative angle. Okay, so positive counterclockwise, negative clockwise. All right, so let's input some of these coordinates. I'm going to start at point 1, 1, right? And it's going to be an absolute input because there's no point previous to base it on. So I'm just going to click on my line command, type 1, 1, enter, and I've started my first point here. Okay. Now this is going to be, again, this is going to be somewhat of a combination of inputs here, because my first input it doesn't have an angle on it, essentially. So I'm just going to move my mouse in the direction I want to go, and I'm going to type 3. There's no angle on it. Okay. My second input here, so I have my first point, my second point here. I guess I'm going to my third, sorry. My third input here, the unit of the dimension is going to be 1.41, and it's going to be at an angle of 45 degrees. Okay. So I'm going to type at 1.41, and it's just the little angle sign on your keyboard. So shift next to the M key, right, at an angle of 45 degrees. Okay. Yep. So it's going to be this unit, 1.41. That's the increment of the distance at an angle of 45 degrees. Okay. So the way that this is measuring this This is the tricky part about these, and you'll probably see me do one wrong because they're just a little tricky sometimes to think about. So when we're thinking about these polar coordinates, okay, we have 0, we have 90, we have 180, 270. I tried to recover from that one. 270, and then we equal out here to 360, right? And so if we have something, you know, we'll just say it starting here. If we have a unit of 1.41 and an angle of 45 degrees, essentially what AutoCAD is doing is it's saying, okay, you're going in the positive direction because you said 45 degrees, not negative 45 degrees, right? So it's going to start at this 0 point, and it's going to move up 45 degrees, and it's going to go from here, it's going to go out a unit of 1.41, right, which is what we're inputting. So that's why it starts here and it goes up 45 degrees as opposed to starting here and going down. This would be negative, okay? All right. So I'm going to type at, and I have to type the at symbol because it's a relative input because it's being measured off that point previous. Okay, so at 1.41 at an angle of 45 degrees, enter. Okay, I don't have an angle here, so I'm just going to type move in the direction I want to go and type 3, enter. I've got the same thing going here. Move in the direction I want to go, type 2, enter. I don't have an angle here, 6, enter, and it worked with just 6. I'm doing I'm actually doing kind of 3 inputs. I'm moving forward towards the next input, which is direct entry, where if I move my cursor in the direction I want to go and I type an increment, it's going to automatically recognize that the direction I'm moving my cursor is in the positive or negative direction, and so it assumes by my mouse's movement the positive or negative direction. So in this case, I didn't have to type -6 because I moved my cursor in that direction. All right, so now I have another polar input here, okay? And it's the same, it's 1.41. And you look at it and you think, oh, 45 degrees again, right? No. Here's a calculator. Right? I have an angle that goes like this. Okay, it's still 1.41. But my 0 is here. So it's actually 90 plus 90 is 180 plus 45. So I have 90 plus 90 plus 45. 180, 225, is that right? 225? Okay. So it's 225 degrees in the positive direction, okay? I also could have said, well, I want to go in the negative direction to achieve that angle, which would have been negative 90, negative 45. So it would be, what is
Negative 135.
135? So negative 135. I could have used either one of those to achieve that angle right there. This is where it gets tricky. It's not hard, right? It's just kind of tricky to think about. Because you look at that and you think, oh, that looks like a 45-degree angle. And it's an increment of a 45-degree angle, right? So I'm going to type at 1.41 at an angle of 225, enter, and it works. I'm going to move in the direction I want to go and type 2, enter, and I finish off that. Okay. So when you look at your homework, oh, I way overestimated where it was. When you look at your homework, there's a few tricky ones like this where, let's see. I'm going to find one with an angle. Okay, right? So here we have, you know, point A is right here, starting here. Point A is an increment of 6 at 7, let's see, where are we at here? 75 degrees. So this right here is 75 degrees from this point, but if I were to have to draw the opposing angle, gosh, this is not a good one. I'm trying to think of one where is the one that everybody always asks me about? I think it's this one. Okay, so I think it's this one. Hopefully I don't mess up on this. Let's see. So here, this is 24 degrees from here to here, but the angle is actually not 24 degrees, right? So if I think of this as 0, it's going to be 90, 180, plus whatever 90 minus 24 degrees is. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So let me calculate that. So when you see these, oh my gosh, this thing takes up the whole stinking screen. Okay, so in this case, this angle would be, if I start at 0 here, it would be 180. So 180 plus, I guess I should have subtracted, 90 minus 24. So 90 minus 24 plus 180, right? So 246. So this angle is actually not 24 degrees. So if you come in and you hit this point and you say, oh, you know, blah, 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 at 24 degrees, you're not going to get the right angle. You're going to get something that is very slightly angled up that direction, right? But if you typed in at, 6.48 at an angle of 246 degrees, then you would get that correct angle, okay? So when you're looking at some of these exercises, and again, we'll blame this on Jeff, right? He says, hey, this is 45 degrees, but if you type in a 45-degree angle, you won't get the correct angle between these 2 points because you have to think of 0 as to the right. So you have 90 plus 45, so it would be 135, okay? So I just want you to be aware on your homework when you're looking at these, if you draw some of those and you don't quite get the angle you want, it's because you're not thinking about it the right way, okay? Okay, so we have polar coordinates. We have absolute coordinate system where points are inputted and measured off the origin. We have relative input where points are input and measured from one point to the next. We have polar input where we get angles, right? But not only do we get angles, we can have angles and use relative input at the same time with it, right? Now, let me go back to where we were. Let's see here. Oop. Lost my page here. Well, I'm pretty sure we were on direct input. Anyway, let's move on to direct input. So I'm going to file, open, and I'm going to go back to this PC, CAD Common, Arch, 1310, and coordinates. We'll go to direct coordinates. Okay. Direct coordinates, the direct entry method, is going to be by far the most common way you input lines in AutoCAD. Okay, so you'll likely use the other methods. I mean, infrequently, right? You will use them, but this is going to be by far the most common way that you're going to be inputting lines into AutoCAD. Okay, so the way that direct entry functions is I'm going to come up here and initiate the line command. I still will have to use that absolute input to get to my first point, right? So I'm going to type 0, 0, enter. Oh, not 0, 0. L-I-N-E, enter. Specify my first point, 1, 1, enter. Now the way that direct entry works is I'm just going to enter kind of what we did on that last polar input, where I don't have really an angle between these. It's 0, right? But I have a unit of 1, 2, 3 between these. So direct entry, the way that this functions is I initiate my line command, I specify my first point, I move in the direction I want to go and I type it an increment, right? So 3, enter. Okay, so by moving in the direction I want to go, I am hinting to AutoCAD that I'm going in the positive or negative direction. And by typing a unit of dimension, I'm going to the next point that I want to go to. Now, one thing I want to point out, I'm going to hit undo here on my line command. If you are not using your object snaps, right, your ortho or your polar tracking, you may get lines that are slightly askew. And let me just see if I can kind of show you what that error looks like. Okay. Does that line look like it's straight? It does, right? I can always tell, though, trust me, when I look at your assignments. I look for straight lines, people. Don't eyeball things is maybe my point with what I'm about to say. But I can hit L for line. I could initiate my line by typing 1, 1, right? I could move in the direction I want to go, not having my ortho on. I could click, or I could type in 3, right, to create that 3-unit long line, looking at it thinking, oh, that's a pretty nice, good straight line. But when I zoom in really closely, this line, the end of it, should have intersected very perfectly with that point, right? And it doesn't. When you're not using your object snaps like polar tracking, which is this little guy right here, or ortho, probably more likely ortho, you may get lines that look like they're straight, but they're not, okay? So you always, when you're drawing straight lines and you're intending on drawing straight lines, you'll always want to turn on your ortho, probably your ortho mode more so than polar tracking, but turn your ortho mode on before you draw that line, okay? So the way that I go about drawing these, L for line, enter. I'm going to specify my first point, 1, 1, enter. I'm going to move in the direction I want to go. You see my polar tracking did engage, which is great. Okay, I should get a straight line with my polar tracking. What I like better is coming down here and clicking on ortho or pressing F8 in the middle of that command, and you see how my line snaps and turns exactly straight. I'm going to type in the unit of how the length of that dimension of that line, 3, enter, and I get a perfectly straight line that's 1, 2, 3 increments long. Now my ortho's still on, and I know that because when I move my cursor up and down, I don't get any movement, right? It's going straight. Whatever direction I move, it's going to create a completely straight, 90-degree angled line. If I press F8 again, right in the middle of my command, now I'm freed up, right? But that also means that I might not hit that line perfectly when I try to draw. And again, we don't eyeball in AutoCAD, right? Because, well, we don't like, crooked lines. But when you draw things crooked, their dimensions are off. And then when somebody goes to build it, right, the dimensions are off. And then the building is off and things aren't correct. And we want things to be correct when they're built. And so you don't want to be guessing on this type of thing, okay? So before I hit my unit of dimension increment, length, I'm going to turn on my ortho again. F8. I'm going to press 1, enter. And because I moved my mouse in the direction I wanted to go, and then I typed 1, enter, it assumed I wanted to move in the upward Y direction, and I wanted to go a unit of, a 1 unit of length. I'm going to move this direction. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, enter. 1, 2, 2, enter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7, enter. 1, 2, 3, enter. If I needed to undo something in there, like I drew something wrong, right? I could come down and I could press on undo. Click. It undid that last line. If I want to bring myself in and out of ortho, I'm going to press F8. F8. If I want to go back into ortho, F8. 3, enter. Okay? I'm going to hit U, undo. It doesn't matter if I slightly move in the direction I want to go and type 3, enter, or if I go way past that and type 3, enter. AutoCAD knows that I'm only going 3 units of measurement, regardless if I haven't quite, you know, touched it or if I'm very much past it. It knows to go 3 increments, okay? This is by far, you know, the most common way you're going to be drawing things in AutoCAD. So you're going to go into AutoCAD, you're going to click on line, click, move in the direction you want to go, 10, enter, right? Move in the direction you want to go, 20, enter. Move in the direction you want to go, 30, enter. And then come down. I turn my snaps off, click, and finish that up. Bless you. Okay. Okay, so we have our direct entry. Direct entry doesn't require any sort of @ symbol, even though, I mean, essentially, you are going from unit, you know, from point to point to point. You are kind of doing a relative input, but it's kind of on the fly and built into the command, so you don't need to put that @ symbol. All right, one more type of input. We're gonna, and I'm not even gonna open the file, we'll just do it in here. I'm gonna delete a few of these things, okay? And we are going to, now I will open the file, I won't be lazy. Open dynamic coordinates. Okay. File, save as, and I'll give this a name, desktop coordinates, dynamic, there we go. All right, so the final type of input that we're going to talk about today is going to be dynamic input. And your dynamic input is this little icon, right? Not icon, but command here down in your Object Snap toolbar. If it's not showing right here, you can go over to Customize, and you can put a little check mark next to dynamic input. Make sure there's a check mark, and then that little icon will show up. It's a little ruler with a plus sign, or cursor, I guess. Click on it. When it's blue and it's highlighted, it's active, okay? Dynamic input essentially puts all of the input at your cursor instead of at the command line, right? So as you're moving around the screen, you don't have to look down at the command line, right? For those of us that have been using an AutoCAD for a really, really long time, it's a kind of a hard habit to get into, because for all those years, it was always go to the command line, right? And so with dynamic input, you're no longer going to the command line, you're looking at the cursor for your input, which is kind of a hard habit to break. But essentially now, when I input, right, if I type L-I-N-E, enter, it's at the cursor, right? And it says specify first point, right? So the input, the instruction is now at my cursor. It's dynamic, essentially, okay? So now instead of going and looking at the command line, I can look at my cursor and say, oh, specify my first point. Well, I want it to be at, oh, it says start here. Over 4, up 1. So at 4, comma, 1, enter. And there's a couple ways that this works. So I'm going to type L for line, enter. I'm going to type at. And immediately at my cursor, you see that that at symbol has been filled out, right? So that at symbol is locked in. And now that 5.3720, that first coordinate needs to be input. So I can type, that's the X coordinate, 4. So now it knows 4 is the next input. And I could type comma, right, which would be the next logical thing. Or in this case, with dynamic input, I can hit tab. Okay, you can't do that on the regular command line, but you can do it with dynamic input. So essentially you're typing at, it skips to, hey, what's your first input? I type 4, and then I can tab, or I could also hit comma, and then that skips me to the last input at my cursor, which would be 1. Enter. Oh, what did I do? I don't know what I did. L for line, at 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, comma 1. Oh, I think because I've been inputting lines all along, I think it's just measuring off my last input. Let's see, 1, comma 1. Okay. Now here's the problem here's one thing I don't like about dynamic input, right? I say it's something kind of new, but it's probably like 8 years old. What I don't like about it is that if I am not super paying attention, it is dynamic. Okay, so if I'm moving my cursor about and I have an angle specified and I type something in here, because my cursor is specified at a specific angle and because I'm using dynamic input, I can get angled lines very easily, right? So I don't like that. I don't like what just happened to me, right? Where I clicked or I typed in one point, and because my cursor was in a specific area, I get, you know, my points in different areas. I guess I don't really like the dynamicness of dynamic input very much. Even though it's somewhat intuitive, I still sort of feel like it's a little bit too much for me, maybe. I feel like it takes a little bit of control out of this. So the way that I like to use dynamic input is, well, I don't use it, but you can if you want to. Actually, I don't even really use it very much, honestly, because I feel like it just interferes with a lot of things. But I use it more as like a direct input, right? So if I have it turned on, I'm going to very much use it like a direct input where I turn my ortho on, F8, and I move it over to my next point, and I'm going to use my object snaps to help guide me with it, okay? Meaning I see my nearest snapping gauge and I click. Okay, I'm going to come up to my next point here and I'm going to click. So the way that I sort of like to use it is more informational, more so than functional, right? You can still type things in like you normally do for any of the other inputs, right? I can still type at 6,4 and have it work. I can still type, you know, at, and I'm just going to make this up so it won't be totally correct, 4 at an angle of, you know, 16 degrees. Enter, and get 4 increments of dimension at an angle of 16 degrees, right? I can still get all of those same inputs here. So I can use it that way, but I tend not to. I tend to use it so that it's a little bit more informational. So I can see what's happening on the screen as I use it as more of a direct input, okay? So I'm going to initiate my line command. I can see that I'm moving over 1, 2, 3 increments, enter. 2, enter. 1, 2, 3, 4, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, enter, right? And I could type at, I bet this is 1.41, is that right? Yep. At 1.41 at an angle of, what was that, 225? 225, right? Enter. So I can use it with all of those other same inputs, but I'm just essentially viewing it at the cursor, right? And 2, enter, and I can finish that system. If you like using it, that's great. If you get used to it and you like it, feel free to use it. It's not wrong or right, it's personal preference. I usually will turn mine off and I don't use it that often, again, because I feel like it's a little bit too dynamic for me. But you can definitely use it if you want to. All the inputs are going to be the same. You're just going to see that input of your cursor when you're working with it. Okay? All right. Any questions so far? All right. So your homework, let's see here. Oop. Oh, let me go to our Canvas page here. Okay. I'm going to go to assignments, and I have our first assignment posted here. Oh, I'll grade that. Coordinate drawings. It's due May 31st. If you click on it, it's going to tell you which assignments you're going to be doing. So the absolute coordinates tutorial, relative coordinates tutorial number 1, relative and polar tutorial. So there's 1, 2, 3, there's 6 of them that you'll be doing. And if you click on this, I've extracted all of those pages from the workbook just to make it even just a little bit easier, right? So if I click on that, these are the exercises you're going to be doing, and there's 6 of them. So the way that you're going to do these, right, is you are going to start a brand new AutoCAD file. Okay. I'm just going to close all these out. Okay. So to start all of these drawings, you're going to open up AutoCAD. All of these drawings are going to be done in decimal units. So for now, don't worry about setting any of your units. You don't have to do that, okay? So when you start your assignments, you're going to open up AutoCAD. You're going to click on Start Drawing. You're going to save it with whatever name the tutorial has. So for example, this tutorial is called Absolute Coordinates Tutorial, okay? And you're just going to follow the instructions. And this one is called Absolute Coordinates, indicating that you're going to be using absolute coordinates to create this, okay? So while you're in here, right, first thing you'll do, come up, initiate the line command, and then you'll just follow the, I'm going to turn off my dynamic input. Initiate your line command, and then just start drawing what the instructions call for, okay? When you've drawn this, I'll do a bad example. Bad. It's not straight, but it's going to look like an H, right? There you go. Okay, so there's assignment number 1, right? You created this using absolute coordinates. You finish it, file, save as, give it that exact same name, right? I'm going to go to AutoCAD, and this is called the coordinates assignment. I'm going to give this file that I generated the exact same name as the assignment, Absolute Coordinates Tutorial. Right, and I hit save. And that's going to be number 1. Close it out to start the second one. Start new drawing. And then you're going to go forward and draw everything like the instructions call for, right? So by the time you're finished, you'll have 6 different files, separate files with separate names. And you're going to submit all of those on Canvas for credit, right? So when you submit on Canvas, you submit one file, and I think it says something like, submit a new file. So you can browse and select 6 different files, and you can submit them all at the same time, okay? And it doesn't work, I guess, like if you finish 3 of them, and you thought, hey, I've finished 3, I want to submit the 3 and then finish the next 3 later and submit again. It won't let you amend or append your submissions, so you have to do them all at the same time. Otherwise, if you submit the first 3 and then 3 days later go to submit the second 3, it will just overwrite the first 3, okay? There's always an issue with this on the first assignment, that's why I say that. So make sure you finish all of them and submit them all at the same time, and you'll have 6 different files that you're going to submit. Yep.
And they're all the DWG file extensions?
Yes, they are. Yep.
So, where you saved it, is that where we're supposed to save it?
You're going to save it, so wherever you work, if you're working here, you can save them on your T drive, right? If you're working at home, you can save them on your laptop, wherever you're saving assignments. Yeah.
I don't have a T drive.
You don't have a T drive?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Will you write down your username?
Yeah.
And we'll give it to Jameson. Or do you have Jameson's email?
I don't.
Okay. Well, before you go, let's email Jameson.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is everybody else's T drive? Is your T drive working?
Working on that.
Okay, but Jameson's, okay. Okay, good. All right. That is all for tonight.